What is going in Toronto right now? Seriously, stop whatever you are doing because the Toronto Maple Leafs have just gone absolutely nuclear this offseason, and if you are a Leafs fan, if you have ever been a Leafs fan, or if you have spent even 5 minutes thinking about this franchise, you need to hear everything that has just happened because this is not just a roster move. This is a full-blown transformation of one of the most tortured franchises in professional sports. And it happened faster than anyone on the planet could have predicted. Let's go back just a few months. The Maple Leafs were limping toward the offseason with questions everywhere. In net, on the blue line, in the front office, everywhere. The fan base was exhausted. Critics were sharpening their knives. People were openly wondering whether Austin Matthews would ever win a cup in Toronto. Felt like the same old story. And then everything changed. Within the span of roughly 8 weeks, a brand new front office came in, completely gutted the roster, won the draft lottery, selected what many are calling a once-in-a-decade talent with the first overall pick, and then went out and signed one of the most decorated goaltenders in the history of the sport. In a single offseason, the Toronto Maple Leafs just pulled off one of the most aggressive roster rebuilds we have ever seen from a team that was not technically rebuilding. The chaos officially began on May 3rd, when the Leafs announced the hiring of Hall of Famer Matt Sundin as senior executive advisor and John Chayka as the 19th general manager in franchise history. Now just let that sink in for a second. Matt Sundin, one of the greatest Maple Leafs of all time, stepping into the front office. And John Chayka, one of the sharpest young hockey minds in the game, taking over as general manager. From day one, these two were not coming in to tinker around the edges. They were coming in to flip the entire table. Since the announcement of their hirings, the incoming brain trust completely shredded the roster as part of a much-needed new look. Gone were several familiar names. Gone was some of the old dead weight. Gone was the old way of doing things. And in their place came something none of us expected to happen this quickly. A real, legitimate, fearsome hockey team being assembled in real time. But before we get to the signings, we have to talk about the moment that made all of this possible. The 2026 NHL Draft Lottery. It proved to be the lucky charm that gave the Maple Leafs the chance to select the highly coveted forward Gavin McKenna with the number 1 overall pick at the 2026 NHL Draft in Buffalo. And let me tell you, the moment that announcement was made, the hockey world collectively lost its mind. Because Gavin McKenna is not just a prospect, he is a player. In his final season with the Medicine Hat Tigers of the WHL, he recorded 41 goals and 88 assists for 129 points in just 56 regular season contests. And he followed that up with 38 points in 16 WHL playoff games, pushing Medicine Hat to a league championship and a trip to the 2025 Memorial Cup. This kid is the real deal. Both of the two previous Maple Leafs first overall picks, Wendell Clark in 1985 and Austin Matthews in 2016, went on to become team captains during their time in Toronto. No pressure, Gavin. No pressure at all. Oh, and by the way, Justin Bieber, noted Toronto superfan, did the honors of announcing McKenna as the Maple Leaf selection at the draft. Only in Toronto, folks. Only in Toronto. Now here is where the script gets truly insane. The opportunity to land an NHL-ready prospect like McKenna was a catalyst for the decisions that followed, especially with Captain Austin Matthews having just 2 years remaining on his contract. It is a window that management has decided to go all in on. And when Chayka said all in, he was not being poetic. He meant it literally, because on the very first day of free agency, the Leafs did something that made every single fan base in the NHL sit up straight in their chairs. They signed Sergei Bobrovsky. The 2-time Vezina trophy-winning goaltender signed a 3-year contract with Toronto, and the ripple effect was felt immediately. This is a man who has won 2 Stanley Cups with the Florida Panthers. This is a man who, when he is locked in, is as good as anyone who has ever stood between the pipes. GM Chayka put it perfectly when he said, Sergei is a real game-changer for us in terms of the stability, the consistency, the durability. Obviously, the resume speaks for itself. Chayka also said the Bobrovsky signing, quote, sends a message that we're serious about moving this team ahead and getting back on track. And honestly, message received. Loud and clear. The rest of the league heard it too. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Bobrovsky had a rough 2025-26 season with Florida. And yes, that is true. His career worst .877 save percentage last season ranked 26th among the 27 goaltenders who started at least 40 games. That is a real number and it deserves to be acknowledged. But here is the other side of that coin. This is a man driven by something bigger than statistics. He is playing with a chip on his shoulder the size of the CN Tower. He is coming to Toronto to prove the doubters wrong. And if there is one thing elite competitors do when the hockey world writes them off, it is respond with their best hockey. The Leafs are betting big on that, and honestly, I think it is a bet worth making. And then there is the human moment in all of this that I just cannot get enough of. When McKenna arrived at development camp wearing his familiar number 72, he quickly realized that Bobrovsky, who has worn that number his entire NHL career, was now his teammate. And without hesitation, without any drama, McKenna ceded the number to Bobrovsky, saying, "Anytime you got a guy coming in who's been in the league that long, won 2 Stanley Cups, I'm not going to take his number. He's a staple in this league, so as an 18-year-old kid, you're not going to take that number." And Bobrovsky, for his part, responded beautifully, saying, "He's a bright guy. He's got really positive energy. I'm excited to watch him develop into a big superstar in this league." That right there, that is culture. That is a locker room starting to come together before a single regular season game has been played. Russian machine never breaks, Russian machine never breaks. But the moves did not stop with McKenna and Bobrovsky. Not even close. The Leafs added Jack Roslovic via a 2-year, $4 million AAV deal. A versatile forward who gives them speed and skill in the middle six. Colton Sissons, a bottom six center, also signed with Toronto, bringing defensive reliability and penalty-killing ability. Teddy Blueger, a dependable two-way center who played last season with Vancouver, signed a 2-year deal worth $2.5 million per year, giving Chayka exactly the kind of responsible depth piece a championship contender needs. And Emile Andre, the restricted free agent defenseman, was locked up on a 2-year, $1.55 million AAV pact. In total, coming into the organization this offseason, Bobrovsky, defensemen Darren Radish and Emile Andre, and forwards McKenna, Nick Paul, Jack Roslovic, Colton Sissons, Teddy Blueger, Brandon Duheim, and Zach Maswan. 10 players in. A completely new identity established. And all of this happening around the core that was already here: Austin Matthews, William Nylander, John Tavares, Mitch Marner. You take that group and you surround it with a true number 1 goalie and a potential generational talent in Gavin McKenna. You start to understand why the hockey world is suddenly talking about Toronto differently. This is not the Maple Leafs of the last 5 years. This is not a team that just talks about a cup. This is a team that is actively hunting one. The window is now. The pressure is real. The expectations have never been higher. And for the first time in a long, long time, that pressure feels earned. So here is your question for the comments section today. Do you believe in this version of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Is this the roster that finally brings Lord Stanley back to Toronto for the first time since 1967? Drop your thoughts down below. Smash that like button if you are even a little bit excited about what is happening in the Six right now. And subscribe if you want to stay locked in as the story continues to develop all the way into training camp and beyond. Because trust me, we are just getting started.